So if you
Sure,
would you please
totally.
tell us a story from your real life of a moment of change?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's two of them, but I'm only going to tell one of them. So the second one that I'm not going to tell is I live in Southern Oregon, and for those that don't know, we had some really intense fires here this last fall. And the very first day since becoming a mom 8 years ago, I dropped all three of my kids off at school for the very first time, and that was the day of the fires. And I
Oh my
literally had to drive through the fire to get to my kids with flames on either side of my car, people fleeing the fire towards me with my husband on the phone, literally not knowing if I was going to survive. And so that obviously was this year, and that memory is still very alive. And I don't, but the reason I bring that up is I think it ties into the memory, the story that I want to tell, which is when I was pregnant with my very first child. And, my husband, like I said, he'd proposed our first date. I had done an around the world trip. We had done a 4.5 month honeymoon around the world. I mean, we had those personalities where we would just jump. And life had always turned out amazingly. And so here we were living in Hawaii at the time and had a beautiful house. And so I was asked to go to Alaska to work as a midwife for 3 months to fit in and for a midwife. And I was going to go up there and we would get prenatal care and they were going to cover my move. And my husband got a job as well. And so we came to the mainland and rented out our house and we had our dog and we were pregnant with our first baby and bought a car and were driving along the Alcan Highway up through Canada to get to Alaska. And I ended up miscarrying in the middle of nowhere. It makes me emotional. There was no cell phone reception. There was no hospital. There was no town. We were camping. And luckily I had my midwifery bag with me. And there was all of the disbelief that this was happening and the surges in my body and I just remember needing water. And so my husband drove an hour and found this hotel where they would rent to us by the hour so we could miscarry and I could get into a bathtub. And in between contractions, helping him understand what to do if I bled out. And, like having to be these, like we're both stepping in as the provider and the parent mourning the loss. And pushed this little 13-week baby out and then had to, right afterwards, get in the car and race to Skagway because we had a boat already booked and make it to Juneau. And when we got to Juneau, they said, "Oh my gosh, we're so sorry, but we actually don't have work for you. And that $10,000 that we were going to reimburse you for your move, we're actually not going to reimburse you anymore." So we literally found ourselves jobless, homeless, uninsured, no longer pregnant with an extra $10,000 debt, and a home that we couldn't return to, and we were with our dog.
Woof.
It was devastating. It was really painful, and that was 10 years ago. And it's so fascinating how much I still have moments where that still paints my current life. Because I go all the stories back to, did I not see the signs? Were we doing too much? If I had just rested a little bit more that day before rather than doing those extra hikes or whatever it may be, and the sadness that I went into and the loss. And then of course, each subsequent pregnancy after that, I've had 3 babies since then. It was really scary until I made it beyond 13 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a midwife and a women's health provider, being able to acknowledge that in women's experience. I know women who have pushed out a stillborn baby, and so their whole pregnancy is painted with this angst.
Mm-hmm.
And then how does that play out, when I finally took the leap as an entrepreneur and had my own business? not as a franchise, not owning a business with someone else, not being an employee, I realized that I was really afraid. I was so afraid that taking this leap, that I would make a poor decision and get burned again.
Mm. Mm.
But the good news is, at least over the last 2 years, it took me 8 years. It took me 8 years to really take another jump. And I remember when I started jumping again, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm jumping. This is really intense. And I had to work with my mindset coach and check myself and do all my stress management stuff to just let my inner child know it's going to be okay. And each time there's this new bit of trust, but it's still scary.